Welcome to our series on the sextup mats of how these teams played in the last IPL and what they've done in the auctions. Very basic one if this is your first video. Essentially batting is on the right and bowling is on the left. So you want your marks to be outside on the right and you want your marks to be inside on the left if that's your team. If it's not your team, you want exactly the opposite to that. Today we are looking at two of the lowest ranked finalists, RCB and the Super Giants. So let us get rid of the Super Giants for a moment and just focus on RCB and this beautiful pattern that they have provided for us. You could see that they never really got going in the batting power play here at all last season. Faf and Virat were not at their best. We know at the moment, at least, Virat is in slightly better form than he was, and I assume they're betting on Faf starting a little bit quicker than he did last season. They could also go with Finn Allen, but I can't see that happening. But even if they do improve their batting, both of these guys are not particularly fast slowers, so it can get bogged down for a little bit, and that's why they want the middle to pick up that slack. They didn't really go ballistic in the middle, but they certainly held their own there. They did select Will Jacks for this auction, who is more usually used as an opener and bowls off spin. So I'm not really sure if he is going to fit into the middle order and also bowl off spin, considering that Glenn Maxwell would be that player already. But you could see that they might want a little bit of a boost there. But if they are slow in the power play again, it's really the middle where they're going to want to continue to be just ahead of the curve as they currently are. I would say that kind of all their batting is just a little bit underwhelming. They weren't bad in any section outside of the power play, but they also weren't really that exciting in any of them either. And I think they probably felt the same way because they went after Green and Stokes and Brook. So they were probably only disappointed in the end to get some cover. This is obviously the part of the game that they are going to need to fix the most. Their power play bowling average was hilariously poor. It sticks out even when you look at all the teams combined, just because of how bad that was. Which makes it even more interesting that they let Jason Behrendorff go, because of course that is where you expect Behrendorff to be quite good. But they did cover him with Reece Topley. Maybe two of the most talented left-arm seam bowlers in the world, but also perhaps two of the most injury-prone left-arm seam bowlers, or right-arm seam bowlers, or just people in general in the world. I'm not sure if he'll play that much, of course, and so you expect him more often to get a lot of wickets out of Hazlewood, who completely did his job last season, and Siraj, who did not. He bowled the most balls in the power play, nearly 200 of them, yet managed to only take 5 wickets while going at nearly 10 and over. That's extraordinarily bad. They're betting on those numbers not happening again, and there's no way that Siraj will give those numbers again, because if he gets halfway through the season with numbers anything like that, they will just drop him. And you can see that that bad average also gave them a bad economy. It just wasn't good at all. But they did pull it back beautifully, in fact, in the middle overs here. Hasaranga and Harshal were so good that they kind of nullified the bad start. You can't ask for much more than that. However, you can see that towards the end, it didn't quite go as well for them again. Harshal did well, but probably not as good as his other best year. But there was nothing wrong with his numbers. Hazlewood did go for runs, but Siraj was absolutely massacred, going at nearly 14 runs and over. He was even worse here than he was at the beginning. And my question about RCB really is, if he has another horror year, I'm not sure there's anything they can do to rejig to make this team work. And because of that, you can see why they were trying to get Stokes and Brook and Green, because they were probably thinking that they had to cover that just in case. And they haven't. They've put some nice players around the edges, but I'm not sure there's anything here that changes the fact that they're Siraj or bust. But let's leave RCB here and pick up our old friend, the Super Giants, or our new friend, the Super Giants, I should say. Things did not go well for them in the top order. They lost a lot of wickets and also scored a little bit slower than what you would have wanted. Both their openers actually did well, but once they lost 1 wicket, everyone they put at first drop just seemed to fail, and usually did so really slowly. And I think this is why we are seeing the overpay on Pooran. Although when I say the overpay on Pooran, I mean there were other teams also willing to overpay on him. 2021 was the worst year of his career, not just in the IPL, but like everywhere. This year he's back to averaging 26 and striking at 132. Those are not great numbers. But weirdly enough, if he managed to do that in the IPL, that would actually make this a better team. It probably cost them more than they wanted, but I can actually see why they went for it. And if you look at this middle period here, they were really good. And this is their openers kicking on, but also Huda, who had a super year. However, no one else really helped at all. So again, you could see why Pooran hanging around in this period and occasionally taking down the spinners would give them some assistance. And you could see that that also held on well at the death. They're another team that had a very incredible batting average at the death, and their economy certainly got a bit more of a kick from it than we saw from Delhi. Part of this was actually Jason Holder, and he's no longer there, but they actually just had a lot of players who stood up. But I do wonder if Holder not being there does give them a few more issues. Their bowling was pretty good last season overall. However, Holder and Chimera are not there, so there's going to be a lot of new bowlers. Holder, I think, is the key of their auction strategy, as they picked up a lot of all-rounders in the hopes of covering him, especially after they couldn't get Curran. But last year in the power play, Mohsin Khan was incredible. Chimera and Avesh were also really good. It was Holder and the spinners who struggled a little bit more, but even so they weren't terrible. And Daniel Sams could come in here as a Holder-light type of player. I think he's more of a backup, but you never know. You could see in the middle that they took a lot of wickets, didn't quite affect the economy as much as they probably would have hoped. Bishnoi was very good, but not sensational. He went at 8th, but averaged 33. But Krunal had a comeback year, and when they needed it, Avesh and Holder would come on and take a lot of wickets. You can see how often I'm mentioning his name, that Holder is really going to be missed from that. But Stoinis will hopefully make up for some of that with his short ball tactics, and I suppose Huda will bowl more as well. I mentioned those two because last year they combined for 11 overs. And we haven't mentioned the big pickup, which is Mark Wood, who I think is probably still at his absolute best when he bowls in the middle overs, although he may not be needed as much here. And it's also worth mentioning his power play numbers are not that bad either. Traditionally, he hasn't bowled much at the death, but when he has, his overall numbers are fine, but he does seem to have some games where he goes for huge amounts. I wouldn't assume, looking at this team, he's going to bowl that much in the middle. The team just doesn't seem to be set up for him to need to do that. And if you look at the death here, one thing I would say is that Mohsin Khan's numbers were so good in a few games that he basically kept them to this record almost on his own. Their other best death bowler was Holder, who was just okay. They have Romario Shepherd as backup, who can definitely bowl at the death, but I really don't like his death bowling all that much, and I would think he's more there for bench cover. And the one thing I would say about their bowling is that the middle completely holds up, and I could see why they'd have another good year. But the power play and the death, we just don't know, because Chimera and Holder played a big part of it, and it really depends on whether you think that Mohsin Khan is perhaps the best bowler in the competition, because if he has another season like he did last season, there's going to be no problems here. Whereas as good as their bowling figures were last season, you can actually see them getting a lot worse this year. Or maybe the better way of putting it is, they might not be worse, they might just be very different. Well, thank you very much for watching another video. We will be finishing the series next week. We will be getting rid of, well, the Capitals and the Super Giants, and we'll be looking at the Royals and, oh yeah, those Titans. So remember to like, subscribe, press the bell icon, put comments in saying how good looking I am, and I'll see you again for the final installment.